Hey guys, so today we have a Ford EF Fairmont from 1995 and we are doing a front suspension rebuild on it. So I thought I'll videotape just the aspects involved of this. It's a pretty simple setup here. So I thought I'll begin by just going through each of the parts involved. So there are three main ball joints. So this is your upper ball joint. You have a lower ball joint that is hidden behind. And you have a tie rod ball joint right here. So this main part is the spindle that connects to the brake and rotor, which is right here. I'm going to be replacing them too, so I might record that. This bar here is called your strut bar, or the radius bar that connects to the chassis through there. This component here is your upper control arm. That bolts on behind. So that bolts on. Hopefully you can see those 4 bolts and nuts right there. The strut tower bolts on the top. So this is your main strut or shock absorber setup here. Your tie rod and your rack end, these steer the wheel. And this here is this bit here is the lower control arm that goes to the chassis. It connects to the strut bar right here and to this the shock assembly there. So there's 3 main bushings for the lower control arm. Your brake lines run from here down. I've removed the caliper. I'm going to replace the brake pads too. I might actually unbolt this. I'll be changing over the brake fluid, so just got to bleed that out at the end, but yeah, I might unbolt that. So yeah, there's your little Ford EF. I think it's the same to I think it's similar to the FGs, but they've swapped that ball joint so it bolts in on the upper control arm, but they're fairly similar. Apart from the AU's just a different hub here. It's not a spindle hub, but anything from EL to from EA, it follows the exact same setup as this. So now we're going to get to unbolting this all. We're going to take it all apart. We're going to replace all the bushings, ball joints, give it a bit of paint. All right, so you're going to need a few tools. Got some sockets, impact gun. Not really needed, but it's nice to have. A few wrenches and pliers. First step is going to be to unbolt this brake caliper. Also this wheel speed sensor. So I'm going to unbolt the wheel speed sensor. Just an 8mm socket on that one. That goes behind. That, crack it loose, done. There's that 8mm bolt that comes out like that. I like to leave the bolt in there like that, and we're going to remove this from the lower control arm and strut assembly bracket. So we're going to just pull it apart. That's all it is. Pull it off. There we go. Okay. I'm going to leave that dangling behind the strut bar. Cool. Now we're going to unbolt the brake caliper from the brake line that goes right there. It is a 12mm socket. 12mm. Pop that on like that. Alright, that's unbolted. These are pretty worn. Look at that. I like to begin by unbolting the upper ball joint. So there's a little clip that goes through this castle nut. So you got to remove the clip, unbolt that nut, and then hammer it out. Right, that is out. They can be quite hard to get out with a lot of rust, but use some of that penetrating spray. And I have these little sharp tip pliers. you firstly straighten the ends out and just jam the plier on the other end and try and get it out. So now that's out, we can put on our 18mm nut or socket on this nut. That should go on, and this should come out just with the wrench. It shouldn't be that tight. Okay, the nut is off, castle nut. Then, so what I like to do is to then undo the upper control arm. Then we can lean this whole assembly forward and get better access to the tie rod and lower joints. Alright, so there are 4 15mm nuts to remove here. Just 1, 2, 3 and 4. Alright, so now you've undone those 4 nuts. This can slide out like that. We want to just get a better angle to work with for our lower and tie rod ball joints. So pull it out a little bit, like you can pull it out as far as you want it. I reckon we'll go all the way like this. Now we can clearly see our lower ball joint right there and our tie rod ball joint right there. Alright, so this one I think is a 22. Alright, that one's drilled out. An 18mm for the tie rod ball joint. Alright, all 3 are out. Now, I'd like to leave this one attached for now until the whole spindle assembly is out. So you want to hammer on this one and that one, hammer down, and that should release the spindle. Done. That's your spindle or your knuckle right here. And the upper control arm came off too, so I'll put these both. You want to separate them into right hand side and left hand side. They are different with the alignment. And there's our assembly off. So now it's just tie rod, rack end, shock, strut bar, and lower control arm. So I think we're gonna firstly loosen the bolts to the strut bar and the lower control arm to shock assembly, and we'll do the tie rod last. So let's loosen up this nut and that nut bar to the lower control arm, 24mm. Pop it on. Oh, it's tight. There we go. These are on tight. There we go. All the way down. All right, and that should give us enough enough loosening now to do it with a wrench. There's the nut, and keep the washer as well. So we're going to now look at the shock to lower control arm bolt. Alright, so first I used a breaker bar, 24mm on the bolt side, break it loose. Now we can use the wrench. Alright, now both ends are spinning, so we're going to get a socket or a spanner on the other end. That end is a 22. Alright, that seems to have worked. We've got off the nut and the bolt. This bolt I recommend, as it can get stuck in there. Just keep getting on the gun and just try and force it out like that. Done. Okay. Alright, now I like to do the lower control arm to chassis bolt. Right, so I've got the breaker bar on there with a 22mm socket. Let's see if we can break it loose. Yep, there we go. That's broken loose. Alright, so that's turning now. As you can see, there's the 18mm bolt head. There's the 22mm nut. So it drives right through the chassis, and over this is the engine mount. So I'm going to put a spanner. Here's the setup. We have the wrench on one end, spanner on the other one. Try and hold both while while you do it, hold them both in place, and this should come out. Okay. So if you tug on that plate, you can get it out. So just hand on there, on the plate. There we go, that's out. Now undo this shock. So let's go. 3 17mm nuts. This one's a bit taller due to the air tank. This longer one's a 15. There's still a nut below that top one, so I've got to undo 4 in total if you're on the passenger or left side of the vehicle. So now we want to undo the bottom sway bar link. That is an 18mm nut. Right there, undo that. Put a spanner on the top. So put the closed end on here. Hold it in place, hold it with one hand. We've got a nut and washer off for the sway bar, bottom link. So now there is nothing holding in the shock assembly and the control arm, so we can pull them out. So yep, there it is. You want it to just clear everything. Yep, that's cleared, yep, there we go. We're gonna remove this now. So I reckon just drop it down. So go to the end near the chassis, hold, pull down, keep holding, pull down, pull down, pull down, pull down, yep, down, slide out. Done. There it is, lower control arm. With the sway bar, that's what I'll do next. 2 13mm bolts. It's called a D-mount. So this holds this sway bar to the chassis. All right, 2 bolts are out. This came down from the mount. I've done the other side too. So both sides are done. There is the sway bar. Get it out of that link. It's a bit jammed up with the tie rod. There we go, done. Sway bar is out. All right, I might leave the strap bar in for now. I'll see if I can get that out later, maybe through the bottom there. But here's our last piece, the tie rod. This is more part of the steering system, but you have your outer tie rod here. With that nut screws it on, and here's your inner or rack end. That goes from here all the way to the steering rack. So you want to remove this dust boot. So there's 2 clips, 1 clip here. There's also 1 clip around the back here. So you've got to undo both of these. So you use the pliers to pinch together the top clip and it'll unfold. So you use pliers, see it there, how it's unfolded? So these 2 components go together. So I've unclipped that, pull it off. Open it up, pull it off like that. Leave it at the bottom for now. There's still 1 retaining ring that surrounds the back end. So for this one, I'll pull the seal. The seal is right there. Again, pliers. And this one, you just pliers and loosen it off. So you just get it loose off of the ring. Dust boots off. Front clips there. Back clips right here. I remove that off with pliers, just loosen it off. And I also wiped off the grease. So when you install it, put some high temp grease on here as well. So the tie rod connects via an inner ball joint like this. So it moves around. If you want to keep both, I would uninstall it with the outer end bolted on. So then you can keep alignment roughly the same. If not, get a spanner, unbolt that nut, remove it off. But as you can see, there are 2 lock spots. So they've indented in two positions. They've indented this lock washer. So you have to get like a punch or a screwdriver, remove the indents on the lock washer, then you can unscrew it. Right, so I have a little chisel and a hammer. That's all you need. So we're going to go under the car. Alright, so I've got this jammed against the indent. I'm going to jam it against the chassis grab the hammer and bang it in, and it should be straight. So I've already done a bit of it. You can see how it's already straightened out a little bit. We're going to do it a bit more, and we'll get the other one on the underside. So let's try and get this top one first. There you go. So I've removed the indent. There it is. Do the exact same on the other side. Right, so for the one behind, I think this chisel's better. So line it up right there, see how it's in the indent, hammer away till it's no longer indented. So the washer is now fully out. So now this is free to spin. Grab a spacer, a vice grip or anything really, twist it anti-clockwise and this should screw out. Alright, so what works for me is these plier / vice grip things. It is a 32mm diameter in gap. So put it on. Look at that. And then just turn it anti-clockwise. So I've broken it loose. Now you can just hold it on the end, unthread it, there it is. There's the boot ring and there's the washer. So get a new one of this. Alright, there we go guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, comment down below. I'll have more out soon.